My name is Kale. For 5 long years, my life was a relentless cycle of exhaustion, sacrifice, and a kind of quiet desperation that gnawed at my bones. I wasn't living. I was existing, day in and day out, pouring every ounce of my being into a singular, unwavering purpose: saving my wife's sister, Alara. Alara, she was always frail, or so they said. A rare, debilitating autoimmune disease, a slow march towards an inevitable end, requiring experimental treatments, round-the-clock care, and medication that cost more than I could ever dream of earning. My wife, Serafina, was consumed by it. Her younger sister, her only sibling, was fading away. How could I not help? How could I not dedicate everything to give her a chance? I worked 2 jobs. Not just 2 jobs, but demanding jobs. During the day, I was a line cook in a bustling city bistro, the heat from the grills a constant companion, the clang of pots and pans echoing in my ears for 10, sometimes 12, hours straight. I'd come home, showered, eaten a quick, often cold, meal, and then head out again. My second job was as a night watchman for a deserted warehouse district on the outskirts of the city. Solitary, freezing, often terrifying in its quiet emptiness. The pay was decent for a night shift, and every single penny went into the Alara's treatment fund. Serafina handled the finances for Alara. She'd show me the ever-increasing medical bills, the invoices for imported medications, the specialist consultations. We'd talk about the latest setback, the new hope, the next impossible sum we needed to raise. I never questioned it. Why would I? This was my family. This was my wife's beloved sister. What kind of man would I be to stand by and watch her suffer? Our apartment was small, cramped, and perpetually on the verge of disrepair. My clothes were threadbare, mended countless times. Ramen, instant noodles, or the cheapest rice and beans were my staples. I hadn't bought new shoes in 3 years. I hadn't taken a vacation, or even a day off that wasn't forced by illness, in longer than I could remember. Our date nights were walking through a park, or splitting a cheap pizza if we could spare the $5 extra. Serafina understood, or so I believed. She'd squeeze my hand, her eyes filled with what I thought was gratitude and shared sorrow. "We're doing this for Alara, Kale," she'd often say. "She wouldn't survive without us, without you." And I believed her. I believed in our shared purpose. I believed in our love, my own dreams. They'd been packed away, gathering dust in some forgotten corner of my mind. I'd always wanted to open a small, cozy bakery. The smell of fresh bread, the warmth of the ovens, it felt like a lifetime ago. Now all I needed was dough for other people's restaurants. All I kept warm was a desolate warehouse. But it was for Alara. It was for Serafina. It was for family. That was my mantra. That was my life. And I truly, deeply, believed it was a life of purpose. Until the day it all shattered. The cracks started subtly, like hairline fractures in a dam I'd built with my own hands. One evening, after a particularly grueling double shift, I was trying to unwind, scrolling through some old, long-forgotten social media accounts. An algorithm, in its infinite, cruel wisdom, suggested a profile. Alara Vance Official. My Alara, the sickly, bedridden Alara. My stomach tightened with a vague sense of unease. I clicked, and my world imploded. There, splashed across the screen, was a life so utterly opulent, so sickeningly lavish that it defied belief. Photos, hundreds of them. Alara, radiant, tanned, not a hint of sickness in her bright eyes, laughing on the deck of a yacht in the Aegean Sea. Alara, clinking champagne glasses in a private jet, soaring over the Alps. Alara, posing in front of a sprawling Tuscan villa, its sun-drenched facade mocking every threadbare corner of our apartment. Her arm was slung around a man, not Serafina, not a nurse, but a handsome, affluent-looking stranger. My breath hitched, my hands started to tremble, the phone almost slipping from my grasp. The captions, "Living my best life. Healing on the Riviera. Another successful quarter, darling. Successful quarter. What successful quarter? What healing?" Every fiber of my being screamed that this was a mistake, a cruel joke, a glitch in the digital matrix. I frantically scrolled, looking for any sign of the frail Alara I knew, the Alara whose medical bills had bled me dry. There was none. Only vibrant health, extravagant meals, designer clothes, and a life of obscene, unearned luxury. And then I saw it. A video. Ilara, slightly tipsy, holding a glass of amber liquid, giggling with a group of equally affluent friends. Serafina was there too, laughing, her arm around Ilara. Serafina, who told me she was working late shifts to help with Ilara's care. Serafina, who wept on my shoulder about her sister's deteriorating condition. In the video, one of Ilara's friends, a woman with a sharp, malicious grin, raised her glass. To Ilara, the world's most convincing invalid, she slurred. A chorus of drunken laughter followed. And then Ilara, my dying sister-in-law, my reason for existence for 5 years, lifted her own glass, her eyes sparkling with cruel amusement. And to dear Kale, she said, her voice dripping with mock sincerity, her gaze landing directly on the camera as if she knew I'd be watching. My personal ATM. He's such a fool, isn't he? Believes every sob story Serafina feeds him. Thinks he's saving my life while I'm out here living it up. The room spun. The bistro kitchen's heat, the warehouse's chill, the endless ramen. It all flashed before my eyes, twisting into a grotesque, mocking montage. Serafina, my wife, my partner, was right there, laughing along, her face devoid of any remorse. They called me a fool. They laughed at my gullibility. They ridiculed my sacrifice. The sound drained from my ears, replaced by a deafening roar. My heart pounded like a drum against my ribs, threatening to burst through my chest. The betrayal wasn't just a discovery, it was a physical blow, a gut-wrenching punch that stole the air from my lungs. My wife, her family. They hadn't just lied, they had orchestrated a performance of suffering, designed to extract every last ounce of my labor, my hope, my very soul, for their own grotesque amusement. They weren't just cruel, they were mocking. They wanted me to know how completely I had been played. And as I stared at Ilara's smirking face on the screen, her words echoing like a curse, something inside me snapped. The good, trusting Kale, the man who believed in sacrifice for family, died in that moment. And in his place, a cold, calculating void began to form. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even smash the phone against the wall, though every instinct demanded such a release. No, there was a sudden, profound quietness that descended upon me, a silence so absolute it felt like the world itself had stopped spinning. My heart, which minutes before had been a frantic drum, now beat with a slow, deliberate rhythm, each thump a silent declaration of war. I didn't confront Serafina that night. When she came home, hours later, humming a tune I didn't recognize, smelling faintly of expensive perfume, I was already in bed feigning sleep. She kissed my forehead, a perfunctory gesture, and whispered, "Long day, my love. Ilara had a rough patch today, but she'll be okay." Her voice was a knife, twisting in a wound I hadn't even realized was there until now. But I didn't flinch. I lay still, my eyes open in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, my mind already whirring, connecting dots that had been deliberately obscured for years. The next morning, I woke before her. I went to my grueling jobs as usual, a phantom Kale performing familiar motions. Flipping omelets, wiping down counters, patrolling dark warehouses. But inside, the architect was already at work. My usual fatigue was replaced by an almost unnatural clarity, a razor-sharp focus I'd never possessed before. Every interaction, every memory, every hushed phone call Serafina had taken, every medical emergency that had sent another chunk of my paycheck into the void, it all became data. Pieces of a puzzle that, when assembled, revealed a monstrous deception. My first silent, calculated move was to secure every financial record I could access. My own bank statements, going back 5 years. The joint account, which I now realized was utterly drained. Credit card statements, meticulously detailing every transaction. Serafina had always handled the Ilara's fund accounts, claiming they were too complex for me, too emotionally taxing. Now I understood why. I found a quiet corner in the public library during my lunch break. I learned about forensic accounting. I researched legal avenues for fraud and embezzlement. I took screenshots of every single one of Ilara's lavish social media posts, time-stamped and documented. I started a hidden folder on an encrypted drive, labeling it simply Project Dawn. I remembered Serafina's brothers, Liam and Ronan. The constant demands for loans for their failing businesses, Investments that never paid off, always justified with, "We have to support family, Kale, especially with Alara so sick." They were part of it. The entire family, a network of vultures, circling, picking me clean, while I worked myself to the bone. And their mockery, that was the key. They didn't just want my money, they wanted my humiliation. But humiliation cuts two ways. And the silence I maintained, the polite nods, the feigned concern for Alara's latest relapse, that was my camouflage. They believed I was still their pathetic, gullible cash cow. They believed they had won. They had no idea that they were standing on a trapdoor, and I was quietly, methodically, greasing the hinges. There were no tears. There was no rage, just a profound, almost spiritual calm. This wasn't about anger anymore. This was about justice. A cold, precise, and utterly devastating justice. I was no longer Kale, the sacrificing husband. I was Kale, the architect of ruin, and I would build their collapse with the same painstaking detail they had built their lies. The planning phase bled seamlessly into execution. I moved with the stealth and precision of a predator. Every action was deliberate, every decision weighed against its potential impact. They had years to construct their web of deceit. I needed only weeks to unravel it. My first call was to a pro bono legal aid society, discreetly, from a burner phone. I explained my situation in general terms, enough to pique their interest in a potential large-scale fraud case involving multiple parties. They assigned me an initial consultation. My second call was to the IRS, an anonymous tip line. I outlined potential tax evasion, unreported income, and suspicious expenditures related to a supposed charitable fund for a sick relative. I provided them with the preliminary screenshots of Alara's lavish lifestyle and a timeline of the supposed medical expenses versus her travel dates. The IRS, I learned, loves a good paper trail, especially one leading to undeclared wealth. My third call was to a forensic accountant I'd found through my library research, one who specialized in exposing financial fraud within families. I paid him a small retainer from my meager savings, promising a substantial bonus once the full extent of the fraud was exposed and restitution secured. I gave him access to every bank statement, every credit card transaction, every medical bill Serafina had ever shown me, every expense I had incurred. He began to cross-reference my financial contributions with their lavish spending. Then came the systematic dismantling of their individual livelihoods. Liam and Ronan, Serafina's brothers, ran a couple of shell companies, supposedly in construction and import-export. My research, facilitated by the accountant, revealed a pattern of bounced checks, unpaid suppliers, and ghost employees. I forwarded irrefutable evidence of their fraudulent business practices, tax evasion, and a few instances of what looked suspiciously like money laundering to the appropriate regulatory bodies and, crucially, to the major banks they used. Financial institutions hate bad publicity and, even worse, risk. For Alara, the dying sister, I had a special package. I compiled all the evidence of her online life: the photos, the videos, the boasting, the direct confession in the video about Kale, her ATM. I then anonymously mailed this package, along with a detailed explanation of her fraudulent activities, to the board of directors of the prestigious private school where she volunteered, often using her illness as a shield for her numerous absences. She loved the veneer of respectability, the glowing recommendations. That, I decided, needed to go, and Serafina, my wife. For her, I started closer to home. She worked for a major real estate firm, known for its strict ethical codes. I compiled a dossier of her involvement in Alara's scam, the years of deception, the financial manipulation. I detailed how she had used my earnings, under false pretenses, to support their lavish lifestyle while maintaining a facade of struggling solidarity with me. I meticulously forwarded this evidence, not to her immediate supervisor, but to the CEO's office, marked urgent and confidential, employee misconduct and financial fraud. Each email was sent from a new, untraceable account. Each phone call made from a disposable number. I moved through my days, a shadow of my former self, but with an inner resolve that was like steel. I continued my jobs, continued to act as the oblivious, sacrificing husband. When Serafina mentioned Alara's latest medical bill, I nodded, sighed, and promised to pick up an extra shift. The bitter irony almost made me smile. Almost. I also consulted a divorce lawyer. Not to file yet, but to prepare. To understand my rights, to safeguard any remaining assets, to ensure I would emerge from the rubble financially whole, while they would be left with nothing. I had copies of every document, every email, every recording. The paper trail, I ensured, led straight to their doorstep. The execution was swift, brutal, and silent. They had no idea what was coming. They were still laughing, still spending, still mocking the fool, but the trap was sprung, and the fallout was about to begin. The first tremors hit exactly 3 weeks after I launched Project Dawn. I was at work, flipping burgers, when I noticed Serafina wasn't returning my texts. Usually, she was meticulous about checking in. I figured she was busy. The reality, I knew, was far more interesting. The next day, she didn't come home, not that night or the night after. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I received a curt email from her HR department, stating she was on administrative leave, pending an internal investigation. The CEO, it seemed, had taken my anonymous tip very seriously. Then came the public unraveling. My phone, which I had carefully kept active for observation, began to buzz with frantic calls from numbers I recognized as Liam and Ronan's. I let them ring out. A few days later, a news article popped up on my feed. A small, local business paper reporting on a massive financial fraud investigation involving two brothers, Liam and Ronan Vance, whose companies were under immediate scrutiny for tax evasion and fraudulent billing. Their bank accounts had been frozen. Their assets, including the luxury cars I'd seen in Alara's posts, were being seized, sound of a car alarm blaring then abruptly cutting off. The house. Not our small apartment, but the sprawling, expensive house they had purchased with my hard-earned money, the one I'd secretly discovered through property records, was served with a foreclosure notice. The bank, alerted by the IRS and my forensic accountant, had moved with terrifying speed. Alara's world, too, came crashing down. The prestigious private school, appalled by the evidence of her calculated deception and the mockery of her illness that had been leaked, publicly severed all ties with her. Her carefully cultivated image as a compassionate, albeit sickly, volunteer was obliterated. Her affluent friends, who loved to bask in her perceived wealth, distanced themselves faster than she could say champagne. Who wants to be associated with a public fraudster? The word spread like wildfire through their superficial social circles. I watched it all unfold from a distance, an unseen hand pulling the strings. I continued to show up at my jobs, continued my mundane routine, maintaining the illusion of the clueless husband. When colleagues asked about Serafina, I shrugged, feigning confusion. She's been stressed with Alara's condition, you know, I'd say, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. The phone calls from Serafina's family intensified. Not just from Liam and Ronan, but from distant cousins, aunts, and uncles who had somehow benefited from the Alara's fund over the years, who now found their own precarious financial arrangements being scrutinized by various authorities. The entire house of cards I had unwittingly supported for so long was now collapsing, not gently, but with a deafening roar. This was the first wave, the initial fallout. The sight of their carefully constructed lies crumbling under the weight of truth was a bitter balm to my wounded soul. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. I had been called a fool, a pathetic ATM. And now they would learn the true cost of their cruel mockery. The collapse was just the beginning of their education. The calls eventually stopped being ignored. They escalated from frantic voicemails to desperate texts, then to emails, and finally to direct, unannounced appearances. I knew this stage would come. It was part of the plan. The first was Liam. He ambushed me outside the bistro after my shift. His expensive suit was rumpled, his face pale and haggard. Gone was the swagger, the condescending smile. He looked like a cornered animal. "Kale, please, Kale, you have to help us," he practically sobbed, grabbing my arm. "The banks, the IRS, they're freezing everything. My business is gone, Ronan's too, they're talking about jail time. You have to talk to them, tell them it was a misunderstanding." I looked at him, my expression blank. Misunderstanding? I asked, my voice flat. Is that what you call 5 years of systematic fraud, supported by lies about a dying sister? His face twisted. It was for family, Kale. We were just trying to survive. Ilara, she needed the best care. The same tired excuses, the same hollow words, now devoid of any power. You called me a fool, I reminded him, my gaze unwavering. An ATM, you laughed at my gullibility. Was that also for family, Liam? He flinched as if struck. Please, Kale, we're desperate. We'll pay you back. Just make it stop. We're family. I simply walked past him, leaving him trembling on the sidewalk. He tried to follow, but my stride was purposeful, unyielding. Then came Serafina. She showed up at my night watchman's post, wrapped in a threadbare coat, her hair disheveled, her eyes swollen from crying. The expensive perfume was gone, replaced by the scent of desperation. She was a shadow of the radiant woman I'd married. Kale, she whispered, her voice cracking, they fired me. My career is over. We've lost everything. The house, it's gone. My brothers are facing charges. Ilara, she's terrified. We have nowhere to go. She reached for me, tears streaming down her face. Please, Kale, you're my husband. We're supposed to be a team. Remember all we went through for Ilara. How much you loved her. I recoiled from her touch. I remember, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, every ramen noodle, every double shift, every lie you whispered about Ilara's health while she jetted around the world on my dime. I remember you laughing, Serafina, laughing at my sacrifice, at my trust, at my foolish love. Her face crumpled. I made a mistake, Kale, a terrible mistake, but we can fix this, we can start over. Just tell them it was all a misunderstanding. Tell them I was manipulated. You're the only one who can save us. Save us, I repeated, the irony stinging. You were never in danger, Serafina. You were the conductor of the orchestra. I was merely the unsuspecting instrument you played to your own cruel tune. She fell to her knees, clinging to my pant leg, sobbing hysterically. Please, Kale, have mercy. We're family, I love you. I always have. No, I said, my voice like ice. You loved what I could provide. You loved the idea of a loyal fool. And you certainly loved Ilara's lavish life, paid for by my exhaustion. I pried her fingers from my clothes, one by one. Her pleas, her tears, her desperate invocations of family and love held no sway. The well of my empathy was bone dry, scoured clean by years of deception. They had tried to break me with their lies. Now they were broken by the truth. And it was only fitting that they came crawling to the one they had scorned. The final confrontation wasn't on a street corner or in a dark warehouse. It was in a lawyer's office, under the cold, impartial gaze of the law. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Miss Thorne, sat beside me. Across the table, looking utterly defeated, were Serafina, Liam, Ronan, and even Ilara, her once radiant face now pale and drawn, her eyes vacant. Their lawyers were there too, but they had little to argue against the mountain of evidence I had painstakingly compiled. Serafina made one last attempt at emotional manipulation. Kale, she began, her voice hoarse, please, for old time's sake. Can't we just forgive and forget? You've made your point. I turned to her, my gaze unwavering. Forgive? I asked, a faint, humorless smile touching my lips. Forget. You stole 5 years of my life, Serafina. 5 years of dreams, of financial security, of trust. You mocked my sacrifice. You paraded your ill-gotten gains in front of the world while I ate ramen and worked myself to exhaustion. There is no forgive and forget for that. Then, I delivered my judgment. It wasn't about vengeance in the heat of the moment, it was about proportional retribution. My lawyer has outlined the terms, I stated, my voice steady. First, full restitution of every single penny I contributed to Ilara's fund, adjusted for inflation and lost investment opportunities. Every double shift, every sacrificed meal, every extra hour I worked. You will pay it back with interest, and not in comfortable installments. It will be a stringent payment plan, monitored by the courts, ensuring that every cent is accounted for. Liam and Ronan groaned, but I continued. Second, all assets acquired through your fraudulent activities will be liquidated to cover the costs. Your businesses, what's left of them, will be seized and investigated fully. Any profits you thought you'd hidden will be uncovered. You will face the full weight of the tax authorities and regulatory bodies. And yes, jail time is a distinct possibility. I turned my gaze to Alara, who was silently weeping. As for you, Alara, your public image, your social standing, your opportunities for a comfortable life, all of it built on a foundation of lies and my suffering, is gone. You will be permanently barred from any positions of trust or responsibility. Your reputation is irrevocably stained. No one will hire you for anything beyond menial labor, knowing you are a proven fraudster who mocked the generosity of others. And finally, to Serafina. Our marriage is dissolved. My lawyer has ensured that you will receive nothing from any legitimate assets I may acquire in the future. Furthermore, any attempt to contact me, or harass me, or spread further lies, will result in immediate legal action. You wanted me to be a fool. You wanted me to suffer. Now you will experience a taste of your own medicine. You will know what it's like to build a life from scratch, with no safety net, no trusting partner, and a reputation that precedes you like a scarlet letter. You will learn the value of an honest day's work because that is all you will have left. Their pleas turned to choked sobs. Their lawyers, grim-faced, knew there was no defense. The evidence was overwhelming, and my resolve was absolute. This wasn't cruel, it was just. They had wanted me to be poor, to be ridiculed, to be a source of endless financial drain. Now, they would experience true poverty, public shame, and the relentless drain of legal fees and restitution. The game was over, and I had won. It's been 7 years since that day in the lawyer's office. 7 years since I booked a one-way ticket and vanished from that city, from that life, from those people. I found a new city, far from the echoes of my past. A city where no one knew Kale, the fool, the ATM. Here I built my bakery. The Daily Rise, a small, cozy place, filled with the aroma of fresh bread and pastries, a dream I had almost forgotten. It's not a grand empire, but it's mine. Every loaf, every croissant, every smiling customer is a testament to honest work and rekindled hope. I met Alara again once. Not the frail, dying Alara, but a woman working as a cleaning assistant in a downtown office building. Her eyes were hollow, her spirit broken. She saw me, but I kept walking, a ghost from her past. I heard whispers that Liam and Ronan had done short stints in jail and were struggling to find any legitimate work, their names forever tainted. Serafina, I heard she was barely scraping by, moving from one low-paying, soul-crushing job to another, the weight of her past a constant companion. They were living the life they had condemned me to. My new life is simple, honest, and truly joyful. I met Lena, a kind, brilliant artist who saw me for who I was, not what I could provide. We built a life together, one based on mutual respect, shared dreams, and genuine affection. We have a small home, a vibrant garden, and laughter that fills the rooms. The scars of the past remain, a faint ache that reminds me of the darkness I escaped. But they no longer define me. I learned a valuable lesson. Trust, once broken, can be rebuilt, but not with the same hands that shattered it. The old Kale, the one who sacrificed everything, is long gone. In his place stands a man who knows the true cost of deceit, and the profound, quiet satisfaction of building a life of integrity, piece by painful, glorious piece. They thought they destroyed me. They only forged me into something stronger. And in the end, that was my greatest victory. My new life is my masterpiece.